Welcome to Tank Talks by BHIVE. My name is Radhika Mahata. I'm your host for today. Maybe please have Ganesh. Ganesh, could you please walk us through your journey up until now? Where did you grow up? How was it like? How did that impact what you're doing today? And for anybody who hasn't, stalked you on socials already, could you please do that?
Sure. I'm from actually a Tamilian, but grew up in Nasik. Used to be a small city. Yeah. Nashik. Yeah, there you go. Small city. Used to be a town almost, right? So, dad was in HAL, so grew up in a township. You know, people from across the country in one small place. Everybody knew each other. That kind of place. Um, and then I went to IIT Bombay, did my mechanical engineering. Decided to we graduated just before the Y2K boom, right? So I'm dating myself, last millennium. But then decided to do core engineering when everybody else was jumping into IT. So did my masters from the US in refrigeration, worked there for about 3-4 years, then came back and set up the captive engineering center in Bangalore in 2004. Post that, decided to get into general management, so did my MBA from IIM Bangalore, and then worked in consulting with Bain, strategy consulting, and then corporate strategy with Honeywell right here. Um, Started my entrepreneurial journey about 10 years ago now. We launched a mobile payments app called Momoe very early. We were almost OGs of doing mobile payments in physical locations like restaurants, retail stores, and so
Was
on.
it because of your love for momos?
The name was because of that. Yes, we started with restaurants, so the name was quite catchy. It actually stood for mobile money everywhere, MOMOE, right? So that's what it was. That time, most other players were doing payments for utility bill payments and recharges, right? But we were one of the first to do restaurant payments. Most of Church Street, in fact, you could pay with Momo on the phone. Did that for about 3 years. We got acquired by a e-commerce unicorn at the time called ShopClues. Ran the entire business merchant side ecosystem there. So in Momo, headed marketing, learned a lot about consumer marketing there. Then did P&L at ShopClues. Once the ShopClues lock-in was over, 2018 is when we got out, me and my co-founder, and we decided to launch the D2C brand called Flatheads at that time. So Flatheads was a casual sneaker brand for the workforce. So if you're wearing hush puppies with your formal or semi-formal wear, what is the equivalent of hush puppies that is as comfortable and work appropriate when you're wearing jeans or joggers to work, right? So that was the thought process for Flatheads. So we kicked that off. It took us about a year and a half to make it. So we launched it in November 2019, and yeah, 4 months in, pandemic happened. So we were trying to sell shoes in the middle of a time where people were, number one, not going to work, number two, not wearing shoes, right? So interesting journey, full of ups and downs, but yeah, so that's how Shark Tank happened at the end of it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, talking of ups and downs in that interesting journey, could you walk us through one or two of those ups and one or two of those downs before the Shark Tank thing blew it up?
Sure. 4 months into launching a new brand, right? Your engines are just starting set up, starting to do your marketing, setting up your Facebook account, all that stuff is happening. Initially, we had done a lot of road shows in places like BHIVE, right? So with WeWork and CoWorks, getting people to, recognize the brand, try out the shoes, right? So all those things were in just starting to be put in motion. And then the pandemic happened, just completely shut down the business for 2 months straight, almost 3 months, right? So that time, that was a massive downer, right? So your entire team is geared up. There's a lot of things happening, right? People are starting to try out the shoes. We were doing a lot of organic influencer kind of stuff as well with LinkedIn, getting people to try the shoes. Right, I was on LinkedIn, pinging 100 founders pretty much every day, asking them to try the shoes on. And then
Go LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
at that time, it wasn't called Sales Navigator.
Okay,
It was called something
something
else.
else.
But yeah. um, In fact, they suspended my account a couple of times too because of that. But once once that engine shuts, it's a massive blow, right? You don't know what to do. You're suddenly in survival mode. So during that time, one of the things we realized was that our suppliers are the same guys who do knits, right? Knit clothes, and they were making masks as well. So we said, "यार कुछ नहीं तो mask बेचते हैं." So we started selling masks because the supplier was ready to give it to us, and they were also struggling, right? So that happened. During that time, because there was no demand, we said, "Why don't we double down on supply?" And our first set of shoes were manufactured from China. So the entire supply chain was disrupted, right? The shoes got stuck in transit, it was not coming in. So then we said, why don't we localize the supply chain? So took that opportunity to double down on the supply, built the entire local supply chain at that time. While everybody else was at their homes, we were in the factory, working with the suppliers to actually
तो
prototype
मतलब
the new
जूते
stuff.
बनाए नहीं तो जूते खाने पड़ेंगे.
Pretty much, right? So that was that was something that actually kept us going during that time when there was no demand, right? So much uncertainty on the demand side. So we ended up creating a supply chain almost for sustainable shoes in India. Not many people were there, right? Most of the sustainable shoes still are manufactured abroad, right? So that was a great journey, I would say. An up in the middle of the entire down, right? When the second wave hit, we realized, after the first wave, that hey, if this happens again, what do we do, right? So during that time, we started developing lounge shoes. What do you wear when you're sitting at home? Or sliders or chappals, right? Anything in your 2 mile radius when you're walking your dog around your apartment or you're doing your 10,000 steps. What are the things? What will you wear?
Balcony to bedroom shoes.
Pretty much, right? Lounge shoes, sliders is what we did. But we used a lot of materials like bamboo, right, in order to get that comfort level for the tropical climate as well. So all those things we did for the second wave setting up. Incidentally, Zappos from the US, which is the largest marketplace for shoes in the US, reached out to us. They had an international program for getting brands to be, exposed to their core audience. That worked really well. So that was a big up for us. When domestic demand was down, the US demand picked up really well, and there was price support as well there. So that was something that we saw as a good uptick in this entire, up and
Absolutely.
down thing.
I still remember my friend from the Bay Area who said, यार ये इंडिया में जो दोस्त थे उसने बोला नहीं तेरे को फ्लैट हेड्स खरीदना पड़ेगा क्योंकि वहाँ पे मिल रहा है. So
Nice.
yes.
In fact, when we sold out of all the stock here, the shoes were still available in the US. So I know friends of mine who bought it there and come back here. So
Awesome. Okay. So national television, Shark Tank, you were on it. All of that happened. How did it affect in a positive way? How did it impact your brand's journey? How did it affect your sales, your numbers, your growth? What was the impact?
So the Shark Tank episode was shot in August, right? So just before that, we had actually run out of cash. So the business was pretty much on pause. And I had actually spoken to the Shark Tank guys saying, "Yeah, it doesn't make sense for me anymore to do this." They said, "नहीं नहीं आ जाओ देखते हैं." So landed up there, and after the episode aired in Jan, so between August and Jan, that's like a lifetime for a startup, right? So we had pretty much closed everything. Our employees had taken employment elsewhere. I was doing some consulting stuff, and I had joined a brand incubator after that. And then the episode aired, right? So it was almost a resurrection from the dead all for the brand all over again. So after the episode aired, I think as a brand marketer, this was a dream, right? So everybody in the country knows the brand, which was, I would have spent God knows how many millions for making this happen otherwise, right? So that was massive. And there was so much demand that was coming through, but we didn't have shoes to sell because the business was not there. So then the journey began of trying to get people to, fund us, get the brand back. Eventually, a apparel brand called Stitched picked it up, right? So they are taking the brand and now they are relaunching the brand as well. So, I mean, you guys have seen growth in your brands after Shark Tank, but I have seen a brand coming back from the dead, right? So it's a very different experience. But yeah, so we are in pre-orders right now. We are shipping very soon. So
Wow. So rising from the ashes like a phoenix. If you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently this time?
one of my investors, when the first wave hit, right, one of our angel investors, I spoke to him and said, "What should I do?" And he said one thing. He said, "You know what? This is not something that will go away very quickly. You should just stop the business, take a vacation, come back 2 years later." I should run that. Unfortunately, I did not. In retrospect, that's what I would do. I would say, यार जूते बाद में बनाते हैं. People will come back to work. तभी करते हैं. अभी रुक जाओ. अभी vacation लेते हैं. So that's probably what I would have done differently. But I think fundamentally the use case still exists. Um, the need is very much there. Um, Looking back, I think we were a little too ambitious on price points. We held it at a very high premium. I think we were off by almost 1,000 rupees, right, which is massive. Your customer segment changes in 1,000 rupees, right? So
Premium
looking
is great. We are sitting at a space which is called premium.
the fact that it is in Church Street is the this thing, right? So positioning also matters a lot, right? You can't be seen in Flipkart selling 100 rupee products and then talk about yourself as premium. That's a hard one. So looking back, maybe I would have built that out much more solidly. The third thing is our shoes are made with sustainable materials, right? So we've used bamboo fiber, we've used banana fiber, we've used linen, uh, we've used like sweat-free kind of material that you use for the gym, right? The recycled polyester kind of stuff. Unless you actually try it out, there is a lot of touch and feel involved with the product, right? On Instagram, a shoe is a shoe is a shoe. You can see an image, right? So education of the customer is very hard. So looking back, I think what we had done with the initial road shows and offline in offices and stuff like that, we should have opened that up a lot sooner. We should have gone offline a lot sooner. We were just paranoid because when you're in the pandemic and then the second wave hits, 4 महीने तक इन्वेंट्री अटक गया दुकान में और दुकान बंद हो गई तो क्या होगा? Like that's a huge risk that you're taking. So we were never very confident of going offline, but looking back, I think it's a no-brainer. We should go offline sooner rather than later. In fact, today it's hygiene for any D2C brand to go offline right now, right? So that I would have definitely done.
Interesting. So, every time I'm talking about shoes, I'm like, I'm supposed to leave for Indore tomorrow. It's a family wedding next week. And जूता छुपाई में हम कौन से जूते छुपाएंगे? Okay, awesome. Can I please have the Q&A? All right, so we have questions for you. Can you share a specific moment of failure or setback that taught you a valuable lesson, and how did it shape the direction of your startup?
So yes, Flatheads was an experiment that you know did not work, right? In that sense, I think. And by the way, in the 10-year journey, we've done what 4 startups now. Me and my co-founder. One of them, Momoe, has worked decently well, but the rest of them have been, fair to middling, and this one was spectacular, right? I think the learning is keeping the emotion with the startup as a founder. Your entire identity is attached to the brand, right? What you're building. It is your baby, if you will, right? So that emotional attachment is there when you are actually trying to build it out, and you are the only evangelist for the company, for the brand that you're starting to build. But then at some point in time, there is a mental shift that you need to do to make sure that you detach from the emotion and then say, hey, is this working as a business or not, right? And if you're not seeing what you wanted to see, you will have to treat that as a sunk cost and then say, okay, right, there are better things I can do. I either move this to a different model, I try something new. Otherwise, what I'm doing right now is not really getting us to where we want to be. That switch is very, very critical, is what I've learned, right? It's very hard to do. And after Shark Tank, I think multiple people who are founders, have been founders, have reached out and asked me the exact same question. How do you make that mental switch? Um, I think that is one thing that
At
teaches
what
you
point do you
from failure.
decide you're going to continue or you're going to hang up
Right?
your shoes?
You have the emotional attachment, but at the same time, you need to be rational as a business decision maker. Right? So that is the hardest thing to do, unfortunately. Otherwise, you
Okay.
get stuck. Right? So that has been a big learning for me.
Right. And we have another question here. So it says the startup ecosystem is fairly dynamic. And how do you stay innovative and ahead of the competition?
I think in the early days, I've done a lot of 0 to 1 and a little bit of 1 to 10 journeys. I think in the early days, worrying about competition just complicates matters. I think you have to be super, super focused on what the customer wants and whether you're fulfilling that need by delighting them or not. Right? It's not just, you know, they want something and you give it to them. It has to be a wow. It has to be, they have to come back and say, where were you all these days? Unless you're able to nail that, everything else is secondary. I don't worry about competition in the beginning at all, right? Until you figure out that you have a credible space to work in, a customer who loves you, and a product that can actually scale, a business model that can actually scale. There is no point worrying about competition. Scale is when you start thinking about what the competitors are doing. Like when we were in Shopclose is a massive organization, right? You were thinking about what Flipkart is doing, what Amazon is doing, what Snapdeal is doing. That is where you need a lot more thinking about, how do you counter what those guys are doing and stuff like that. But it becomes very defensive, you know what I mean? If you focus on the consumer and build that better than everybody else, competition is secondary, is what I say.
Maybe your consumer wants a faster running horse, but that's not what the world needs.
Yeah. So when it comes to disrupting and category defining stuff, like what we are doing now, we are starting a new startup. There, the category does not exist, right? It's a brand new space, which is almost a latent need. People don't know that they need this right now, right? So if I go and ask a customer, they will say, "Yaar, right? I don't know what I need here because this doesn't exist." So in those situations, you really need to, get into a lot more observational research, understand the insight behind the problem, and then come back, right? So those are also, again, their competition does not help you at all. There is no competition.
Thank you so much for your time. And I mean, just in the last 1 minute or so, when you said wow, I was like, there's this, anybody on Instagram?
All of
Yeah.
us.
So elegant, so beautiful, looking like a wow. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.